Americans are still trying to get out of Afghanistan any way possible. Some U.S. politicians say they're being held hostage by the Taliban. So what do the Taliban want? Official government recognition? Well, China, Russia, Turkey, Pakistan, and Iran appear ready to do so. A Taliban spokesman assures the world community there's nothing to fear, saying, quote, "We will always be vigilant in protecting the rights of women and minorities and the freedom of speech of Afghan citizens." Well, that announcement came as Afghan women were being tear-gassed and beaten for holding protests demanding their rights. The Taliban arrested Afghan journalists, and protesters scrambled to take cover when shots were fired. Well, here with more on Afghanistan and what to expect elsewhere in the Middle East is retired U.S. Army Lieutenant Colonel Sargis Sangari. Mr. Sangari is CEO of the Near East Center for Strategic Engagement. Sargis, it's always good to talk with you. So, the United States government still lists the Taliban as a terrorist organization. So should the U.S. join other countries and recognize the Taliban's newly created government, the Islamic Emirate of Afghanistan? What do you think?
Well, they're already meeting with the Taliban. I mean, when you have your CIA chief meeting with the Taliban to discuss terms, that in itself is recognition. When you're giving money to them in support of what you might be looking at as possibility of needs to get Americans out, you're already talking to them, as Secretary of State of Blinken stated, that we will use all economic, political capabilities to ensure that the Americans are still in Afghanistan depart. The Taliban are not asking for millions, they're asking for billions. And Iran has already supported the Taliban by moving oil from its borders directly into Afghanistan, as they have received weapon systems that they never had access to because of the sanctions now, which the Taliban are providing for them for these type of resources.
Well, let's talk a little bit about Iran. The Iranian president, Ibrahim Raisi, says he would like nuclear talks to resume, but without any pressure, while the Iranians say they don't want any preconditions set for negotiations, yet they've set a condition of their own by demanding the U.S. sanctions be lifted prior to direct talks with the Biden administration. Now, many geopolitical analysts say the United States is now perceived as being weak because of the way Biden left Afghanistan. So how do you think the Iranians are viewing the future of the Middle East? What moves should we expect from them?
Well, the Iranians are already completing their Shia Crescent. They are now in Afghanistan advising the current Taliban government on the ground. And actually, the Taliban, before they took Kabul, they actually diverted with their force structures to initially take Herat. Why is that? Because Iran, for 2 months, wasn't able to move oil from Iran into Afghanistan, as oil trucks were getting destroyed along that border. So it actually used the Taliban strategically for their benefit as it starts now pumping oil into the Taliban's hand. However, money makes it to the Taliban, regardless of which nation gives it to them. It will be funneled through that capability of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, which has its 28th Jubilee currently led by China, back into Iran. Iran is in a much broader negotiation capability. As of today, the leader of the commander of the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps made a warning also to northern Iraq, stating that any elements that are out there currently supporting the state of Israel and the United States will see a broad and swift response from the Iranian government for its own interests, meaning that it's possible that although Iran is conducting drone strikes against the Kurdish elements that were from Iran that are operating out of Iraq currently, it is possible that they might be looking for a broader reach into northern Iraq itself.
So a stronger Iran, and next door to Iran, American troops are set to withdraw fully from Iraq by the end of this year. Should Biden keep some of those troops there or leave Iraq to the Iraqis?
Well, if he pulls them out, you're going to see what we see currently. The day after Kabul fell, we got the word from our commanders of Syrian Christian military forces on the ground that are no longer on the battlefield but are still operational in other capacities, stated that ISIS has started manifesting itself. Turkey has scheduled a possible meeting with Erdogan, with the Prime Minister of Iraq, because Turkey is looking at a broader action in Syria. You're looking at that probably taking place sometime before the end of the year.
And Sargis, before you leave us, I've got to ask you about South Sudan. It's been almost 3 years since warring factions within the country signed a peace deal, yet we've seen a surge of fighting in western Equatoria State. Tell us what's going on in the city of Tambura.
Yeah, President Silva was never elected president in South Sudan. He actually was appointed in that position, and it's unfortunate. It's just the way it worked out when Dr. John Garang died in a helicopter crash. He assumed the position for presidency of South Sudan, and when South Sudan became a nation, he just literally walked into that position. He's in a fight with his vice president. The two are jockeying to see who would be empowered. The problem with South Sudan is it will not work in this structure. If the president steps down, the vice president takes over, it's going to be the same scenario as it is currently. You need to have an outsider to be able to come in and reset South Sudan. South Sudan demographically is very young, so South Sudan needs young, capable, Western-looking leaders that can operate it. Otherwise, it will be nothing more than another failed African state led by a corrupt leader.
Yeah, old enemies there, the Nuer and the Dinka, fighting over oil and fighting with one another. Okay, Sargis Ngari, CEO of the Near East Center for Strategic Engagement. Thanks, Sargis, for bringing us up to date and for sharing your insights. We appreciate it.
Thank you very much. Anytime.